Hey everybody, and welcome back to my How to Make a Comic Book video series. It's certainly not the only way to make a comic book, it's just the way that I make a comic book. So, if you are new to the series here, the first video we talked about the script. Just kind of blocking out some pages and brainstorming and figuring out what a spread was going to look like. And then I made a kind of a 1.5 video, and that was covering different materials, pencils, pens, rulers, things like that. And hopefully some people found that helpful. And so in this video, we will actually do some drawing and make 2 pages on this lovely piece of paper here. In the next video we will ink, and then we'll color, and then we'll have a beautiful comic book, or at least a couple of pages. So let's get started. Now, the first thing that we have to do here is, well, one, we get our nice Bristol board. This is 11 by 17, and I like this size because I can fit 2 pages on here, so I can work, on the entire spread versus using a little half sheet or a 8.5 by 11. Then I can only fit 1 page on there. So this is the way that I do that. But then the first thing we have to do is mark off the borders. And you want to talk to your printer if it's going to be printed, and find out what sizes they need, because they may all be different. And for the printer that I'm going to use, they requested 6 5/8 by 10 1/4 for each page, with 1/8 inch bleeds and I believe 1/8 inch margins. So this is 11 by 17, 11 inches this way, 17 inches that way. And I'm gonna just kind of measure this out to make sure. And if you can see, it actually is a little bit less than 11 inches. So you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're measuring these things out. But I think we can go about 1/4 inch into the paper, and I like to use a red pencil, although it really doesn't matter. You can use whatever color you want. And I just leave a little mark there, and then come to the other side. And I'm still working. This is going to be the top of the page. And so I'm rolling that up to the 11. And I'm going to come in 1/4 inch again. And this is going to be our top. And I'm going to come in one more place, just for good measure. And 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to use this longer ruler to make sure I can go all the way across. Line up. It's kind of hard to see from this angle. And it's fairly good. And there we go. And that's the top of the actual page, where the page will actually end. Now, you also have a margin, which, you know what, I'll explain that in a little bit. It might be easier to do it this way. So, the next thing is I'm going to line up the bottom of the ruler there to the base of the paper, or bottom of the paper, so it's a nice square edge, and just measure down to 10 1/4 right there, and then do the same thing here, and that is going to be the bottom of the page, 10 1/4 here. So now we have a rough layout showing what our pages are going to look like. So that is real size, page, what number are we on? 9 and 10, what we're working with. Now, when I was talking about margins and bleeds, so your trim size is what they're actually going to cut the page out to be. So this line is our trim size, and that's the final dimensions that they gave us. Now the bleed is if your art's going off the edge. So if you wanted to imagine there's art here, or maybe I could just grab a book. So we got some Harley Quinn, and so the cover, for example, it goes all the way to the edges. Now no one can print to the edge like that. What they do is they actually print it slightly bigger, so maybe it comes off that way, and then they cut it down to this size so that you have a full bleed. On the inside, actually on the inside is the same thing. It's all full bleed. So this art actually extends probably an 1/8 inch or so, maybe even up to a 1/2 inch, probably not that much though. And then they cut it down to this page, so we have full bleed. So that's what they're talking about when they ask for a bleed. If they want an extra 1/8 inch, you gotta give them an extra 1/8 inch around the edge of art, color it in, draw it full detail, and then when they cut it, just in case it's slightly off one way or the other, or whatever, you got a little bit extra, and you have sure that you don't have a white border going around it, unless of course that's what you want. The margin is kind of your safety zone, so it's kind of the opposite. So your bleed is on the outside, the margin is on the inside, so you don't want to put anything important inside the margin, because even though it's cut by machinery, it's never perfect. It may shift here or back and forth a little bit. It's not going to line up exactly. So if you put some text right to the very edge, there's a possibility that it could get cut off. So this particular company is asking for a 1/8 inch margin and bleed. So you want to stay away from anything important anyways, such as usually the words, the text is definitely, you want to keep it inside of, have like a 1/8 inch buffer. So that's all that means. Margin is inside, bleed is outside. And a lot of times the requirement is the same, so 1/8 either way. So all of our art will extend past that, but all the important stuff, say maybe a facial expression or a little detail that may be significant, or text, stays at least an 1/8 inch away from the border. Now, like I said, this is going to have a white border going all the way around it and around the frames. So, and that border is actually 1/8 inch, so I don't have to worry too much about that. The problem's kind of solved itself. So I will next. So truthfully, I usually don't even bother to draw a line for the bleed because I really don't need it. But I will do the margin just because I'm going to have to draw that border in anyway, and it is coincidentally 1/8 inch. So I just take my little tiny ruler and I just mark off an 1/8 inch at various points, just to actually, let me double check that. It's not an 1/8 inch. I have gotta check my cheat sheet. So yeah, I do a 1/4 inch actually around the top and sides, and a 1/2 inch at the bottom. And the border between frames is an 1/8 inch. Sorry, so I misspoke. But that's why I make my little cheat sheet, because I don't always remember it. But when I was measuring, that just looked really small. I said, that's not right. So I will actually do a 1/4 inch on the sides, and just kind of marking off here. Now for my purposes, this does not have to be straight, because even though I like to pencil it in just so I have a ballpark idea, but once I start drawing the frames, I actually kind of scribble these frames and borders in. I just think it looks cool. I don't know why I did that initially. Maybe it was a mistake. I don't remember, but I thought it was cool. I like the look of it, and so that's what I'm rolling with. So realistically, because I'm drawing freehand these borders later on, I don't have to be super precise with this. If I wanted to be really precise, I would do it with a computer, so I'd probably just draw, you know, as with the bleeds and everything, and just draw freely, and then later on, with the computer, when I scanned it in and was coloring, then I would probably just add a white border to it. So, just kind of depends on what kind of effect you want and what you like. Although it probably still would be a bad idea to mark where your border was going to go, just so you were sure not to put anything important that was going to get cut off. But, you know, just stay away from the edges and generally you'll be fine. So that's for the 1/2 inch at the bottom. I'll put 1/2 inch mark here as well. Our basic drawing area all set. So here's page 9 and 10, I believe we're working on. Or sorry, 8 and 9. And I don't know how well you guys can see this because I did draw it very lightly, but hopefully you can see it well enough. So we have a thicker border at the bottom and a nice even border going around the edges and in the middle. To separate the 2 pages. Now, if you remember from the script, this is the rough layouts that we were doing, and what needs to happen on this page. So I kind of like to keep that open just as a reminder as I'm drawing. And I decided not to film this part because it was a bit redundant. But after videos 1 and 2, I went through and redrew the layouts to scale. So I kind of have this template that I trace that has a basic size of the actual pages in a 1/2 scale, just so I can quickly sketch in here. And I kept everything pretty much the same, but I really wanted to focus on the actual poses and where the dialogue bubbles were going to go. Just really work that stuff out to make sure that it was going to look good and all fit within the pages. And so that's kind of what this page shows. And so I'm going to use this as my reference. You can see they're still very rough sketches, but I've got the text bubble placements, just making sure that the page is going to flow nicely. And I had to change a couple things, like I originally had his face this way. I decided to put it that way because I thought it would flow better. So as you're reading, you kind of go this way, and there's a text bubble and that, and they kind of see how they all kind of come this way and it brings you down that way, and then you got the character drawn here and it brings you to the bubble here and it points to his face, but even then that kind of goes this way, and here it kind of brought you right here, and so I brought his face over to that side because I feel like it would bring your eyes this way and then to the text and there, and I'm actually going to move that little bit of text here. Forgot to erase that. I decided I was going to do it because it felt a little bit off. You're already down here. It makes more sense for the copy to go down there. So that will go, I think it's I told you. That's going to go down there because your eyes are already down here. So let's leave them there. And then you kind of start over at the beginning here. So I'm going to use this as a reference. I'm going to keep that off to the side, and this is actually just a extra large binder clip, nothing particularly fancy, but when you're working on an angled surface here, see paper sliding down, I kind of want it to stay up and out of the way but where I can still see it, so I just use that binder clip to kind of stick it in place out of the way but where I can still look at it for reference. And this pencil, Alright, so let's get started, and hopefully the light isn't washing things out too much. Okay, so now actually I'm going to use the red pen still, or red pencil, because I want to black in the actual frames. So if we look at this guy, I don't know how well you guys can see it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 frames up top. That will go roughly here. A big frame in the middle, and then 3 decent sized frames or panels, I'm not sure the best way to call them, down here. So I'm going to divide this page, and I kind of freehand this a little bit just because I'm not using real measurements or anything. It's not, but just looking at the scale of it. Actually, I could measure because I did tell you that this little template is half scale. You can get a pretty good idea of how big to make that. So that's now, truthfully, those panels are on a bit small side, but I think they'll be okay. The only one that I'm really the least bit concerned about is this one, number 4, because that's the only one that has to have dialogue in it. So let's see what exactly that says. It is, "What about the rock?" And then you can't eat a rock. So let's see how I can fit that in. And I'm just going to pencil that in. Switch over to blue now, because I'm doing a little bit of drawing. And I like drawing in blue better. So I'm just going to put in, what about the rock? Now, something with text bubbles. So you can place those a few different ways. And one of the ways, which I'm probably going to use right now, is if you put it in a corner, if you've got a white border, you can use that space. You do want to stay safe within your margins, but this is because it's on the inside. Nothing's going to get cut off there. So I want to be safe around the top and not have anything too close to the edge there. But I can go fairly close to the edge that way. Although I don't want to be too nuts with it because it is there's going to be a seam there. So as long as I keep it that 1/8 inch, I can buy a little bit of space there. So I'm going to put, let's see, I can actually measure that just to make sure I'm in the clear. So, we want to be 1/8 inch in. So that's just cutting this line basically in half. And I'm going to eyeball it there. And I just put a dotted line very lightly. And then an 1/8 inch here. And again, I'll do a dotted line pretty lightly. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just want to keep a nice buffer. the rock. Right there. About the rock. Question mark. So that does fit. And the text bubble I'm actually going to make slightly bigger than that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Not even close. Because I'm actually going to put the type in by computer. And so I will have a little bit of, I will be able to play with that a little bit. We'll be able to maybe squeeze it a little, shift it around a little bit, whatever's necessary. But looking at this here, I tried to draw it at about the same size. This is a previous page, so I like to keep this as a reference so I have an idea of how big my text is and things like that. So I actually maybe drew the letters a little bit smaller, but at the same time I have a little bit more space for the leading. So I mean, that's just my natural handwriting there. So I think we should be good. And then so I'll leave about that much space for text. And the tail will go somewhere around there. Now because I'm going to be drawing that in the computer, that's why I just kind of lightly put that in, just so I know it's there and I know I need to leave that room when I draw his head there. So we should be good. And for these inside panels, I usually do 1/8 inch. So I'm just going to measure an 1/8 inch all the way around. And again, it does not have to be perfect because I'm just going to ink these borders freehand. So it kind of doesn't even matter. Alright, so wherever I'm concerned about space, I write in the text first. So this panel here has quite a bit of copy going around his face. Or actually, sorry, it goes this way. Forget I'm doing it that way instead. And so I don't know how tall I should make this, so I'm going to write that in first, see how much space it takes up, and that's going to decide how big that box is. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to do this lightly first, just kind of guessing. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll be 6 lines. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. So that's actually going to give me a pretty good idea how much space I need. That takes up, well, it looks like each line takes up about an 1/8 inch. Roughly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's actually a good estimate there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I need 6/8. Which I guess is 3/4, isn't it? 2, 3. About that much space. So roughly here. Now at this point, you notice I drew the mountain range going all the way across both pages. Like I said, with this particular comic book and maybe others down the road, I don't know, but that's kind of something I've been consistently doing here, is whenever panels kind of line up, I've just been kind of keeping the background going, keeping it consistent instead of drawing a background here and then it's slightly off here. It's just kind of a one long continuous thing. Now, realistically, I don't know if it makes sense because this rock is going to be here and it's going to be there again, so it's not really like a landscape, but it's still just, I think it looks kind of cool. And it will have a separation here because there will be this white border separating the two pages and the seam there, but the lines will still kind of be there. I usually ink those lines, kind of break them off a little bit and pick back up outside of, I don't stay inside the lines basically, but there will be no color. So this will be white, but you'll still see the lines there, and then you have color in here. So I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool. I like it. The other thing that I don't remember exactly what this rock looks like, and so since this rock has been in a few different pages and panels, it doesn't have to be exactly the same every single time, but I do want to keep a pretty consistent look to it. So I'm just going to grab another page that I was sketching out here, and actually it's parts of this needs to be redone because I didn't quite, he looks a little bit older than I want him to look on here, but so basically the rock kind of has this shape, which, and there it is in the distance, so it kind of has that, kind of wide and has a little bit of a peak to it. So I want to make sure I keep that same feel. So it kind of goes like that. And then, you know what, actually though, it's not going to be exactly the same as that because we're on the opposite side of it now. So this is kind of maybe the front of the rock and he's behind the rock. But I can still try to, that's going to be a lot harder to mirror it. That still may work. I think as long as I have this kind of flat and then goes like that type of shape, should be fine. And then it has on this side little extra rock bits. So I'll just kind of get that in there. How does that go? Kind of like that. So that's roughly the shape of the rock, I guess. And I'll just kind of do this type of stuff. Alright, and that's probably good enough for now. So I can put that drawing away. Alright. And I guess while we've got it paused here, this was kind of a happy mistake here. I didn't really intend on making his head kind of see how it's cutting into the top frame here, or upper frame here. That wasn't the plan. If you can see on the original sketches here, it was just going to be a close crop of just his face there, and it was just going to cut. there, and that was it. He was going to stay inside his panel where he belongs. But when I was drawing it, I don't know. I was drawing it to get his whole head, and for some reason I just kept drawing his head, even though I planned on cutting it off there. I kept going, and as I did that, I kind of liked the way it looks. Now the page does end here, so it's still going to be cropped some, but I think I'm just going to let it bleed off, and I haven't done that yet, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, because normally if something goes past the border, it goes into black and white, and only the colors on the inside. So I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to color that yet, if I'm going to let it bleed off all the way, and he's just kind of outside of the page. It's kind of what I'm leaning towards, because it's a face. If it was something else, I could feel like maybe I could get away with that. But I think that would look really weird, being a face and losing color. But we'll worry about that part later. But for right now, I think that looks kind of cool, having his head come up and kind of taken over, and just the text over here. So yeah, that's what's going on there. And so sometimes you can plan all you want, but sometimes you gotta be open to experimenting and coming up with things on the fly. Alright, so now, likewise, this extra box here, even though I initially liked it, it doesn't really feel necessary. And this page has a lot of panels. We've got, it'll be 9, I think, with this little, and it's just a close-up of his mouth repeating the same line. I think it kind of works. When I was reading through it, I liked the idea of it, and I think it added a little emphasis, but I'm not convinced it's necessary. So I'm going to draw this panel, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space here, but just in case, but I think at the end, I'm going to get rid of that. I don't think I like it. It's not that I don't like it, I just don't feel that it adds anything, and it just kind of maybe adds some clutter, if nothing else. But we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and draw Mustard kind of looking under this rock, and we'll see what happens with it. And yeah, as you can see, there's really no order to the way that I'm drawing. I think I started here and there. It's just kind of what I feel like drawing at that moment. Once the panels are laid out, you can kind of jump around wherever you want. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to go in order. It's all plotted out. You just kind of follow along and draw what I feel like drawing at the moment. So yeah, let's do that and see how it looks. Nothing's ever final until it's done. So I just keep trying things, keep experimenting, and whatever it takes to make it look good. Alright, so and we got him. He's it's kind of a weird posture, but he's bending over, looking. He's trying to look underneath the rock, and he's kneeling. So that's going to be kind of his butt kind of sticking in the air. He's got his knees on the ground. And one hand is actually going to be on the rock. And the other one going to be on the ground, kind of supporting himself. So So that's going to roughly be his pose here. And he doesn't care that his hair is getting in the ground. And he just kind of threw his hat. Don't want to forget about that. He just kind of threw it off to the side while he's digging. And he's got a little pack with him too. And so that we could just, actually maybe I should look and see where he threw that down exactly. Let me go back. It's hard to remember little details like that because, you know, sometimes you just throw it down anywhere. And so he's shifting kind of up here. His hair is just gonna kind of be in the dirt. And so I kind of, especially on the images or shots or whatever where he's a little bit far away, I kind of just rough in the anatomy. And truthfully, that looks a little, I would probably take a little bit more care if this was a cover or if it was a closer up type picture. But Mustard wears pretty baggy clothes, and he's a kid, so his proportions are kind of weird anyway, and he's probably malnourished. So I kind of feel like there's a lot of flexibility there. So as long as he kind of sort of looks right, I don't worry about it too much. I just kind of draw him in, get his basic proportions and the basic feel of what he's doing, and put the other leg in here, which, alright, so, and maybe I'll go through one day and do a different tutorial on character drawing or something like that, but basically just kind of sketching a rough skeleton and then rough muscles on top of it, kind of just getting the feel. Like, okay, that's kind of where his shoulder is gonna go, and you know, his back kind of twists a little bit with this pose. You can see a little bit of, and he's a kid, so there's not a ton of muscular definition anyway, but he obviously still has to move, so he does have some. So you can see kind of the quads, just kind of getting the basic overlapping of how the muscles kind of go together, roughing in those shapes. And so basically drawing him naked first, and then going back and putting some clothes on him, because you know we don't want to have a naked kid running around here. So he wears a hood, which let's see if he's bent over like this. The hood might kind of flop over onto his neck some. So I'll kind of make it bunch up here a little bit. And he wears this sleeveless kind of vest deal, and so that's very loose. I'll make that drag on the ground a little bit. And so I'll just put some lines and shading for that. And then he wears these jeans. And just put some, and they are cuffed at the ankles, so he can grow into them. Actually, that's kind of a tricky shape. If it's a cutoff shirt, cutoff sleeve, how would that come down? Kind of a weird, because there's these big loopy armholes, like this one here. It would probably kind of flop down a little bit. And that might be a little bit hard to see. So when I come back, if someone else were inking this, I would definitely have to clean this up. Seeing how I'm the one who's going to ink it, I don't have to, I kind of know what I'm going for, so I don't have to draw it perfectly at this point. Although the better job I do, obviously the easier it'll be later. Let me just, because that is a little tough to see here. But that's why you keep it light, so it's going to kind of loop around that way. And there's his hood kind of. So this is what it looks like once I finished drawing, inking. I scanned it in, cleaned up the artwork a little bit in the computer, and it ends up looking like this. This is how it looks before I start adding color. And I just wanted to show you this because I realized as I was reviewing some of the video that it was pretty washed out and difficult to see. So I'm going to make another video where I think I'm going to work on the cover for Reboot number 2 and really go through more of the drawing side of it, like how I actually draw characters and backgrounds and things like that, and just some drawing techniques. I think that'll be really helpful and probably more interesting and fun to do. So I'll leave this video as more of the layouts, the planning a page, the going over margins and bleeds and things like that, and I think there's a lot of useful information in there, at least I hope there was, but it also kind of showed that there's a lot of work that you have to do before you actually start drawing the fun part. And also, if you've been following along and remember from the script, you'll see that this is a little bit different from what I initially planned. I actually had to redraw a couple of panels from what I had originally done. Mainly his face, I had to rework a little bit because his facial expression just didn't look quite right. And I initially had an ant instead of a centipede in this on this page. And then after talking to one of my friends who happens to be a biologist and he really likes bugs, told me that ants wouldn't be in this area. It didn't make sense. He said it made more sense to be a centipede, so I had to redraw that, which wasn't too difficult. But I'm pointing this out to let you know that even if you plan something out, even after you draw something, if it doesn't look quite right, don't be afraid to redraw it, rework it, do what you got to do to make it the best work that you can. And so this is both pages side by side. I didn't talk about and walk through the other page. I think it was 9 and 10, but I still wanted to show it to you so you could see how they look side by side and how it's kind of plotted together. I design a spread, not a single page, which is something I've mentioned more than once. So you can kind of definitely see that, I think, with these two pages. The way the mountains in the background kind of continue through as in one long mountain range, and the way the frames kind of line up at the bottom and top, at least on some of them. So hopefully you found this interesting and helpful, and hope you enjoyed it a little bit, and if you didn't, I'm sorry, I know it was long. But Reboot number 1 is available at LeCirqueStudios.com right now, so I will include a link at the bottom underneath or in the description, so you can just click there to download a copy. And you can look for Reboot number 2, available hopefully February 2016. That's the goal for right now. Don't have a specific date, but you know, maybe for Valentine's Day. Maybe that'll be your Valentine's present from me. So, hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you soon.